you can have the greatest thing in the world, but if people don't know about you, they're not going to come to you. It's not going to be a case like Field of Dreams, build it and they shall come. So people have to know about you.
Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Relentless Life on Your Terms. I'm joined with a friend of mine, Tony Kofkin. Tony, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Chris, and thank you for inviting me down here today. Beautiful offices you have here.
Thank you so much. You have a very interesting journey. Now we're going to touch on your impressive financial professional services career, which spans over 30 years.
32 years
32
now.
years,
Yeah.
yep. And also...
I started when I was 7, Chris. So.
Yeah.
Very,
very young.
That's right.
People are trying to do the numbers. And also, you've had some very, very impressive athletic accomplishments as well. I want to talk about how they merge. So let's start first with your professional accomplishments. So you started 32 years. Let's go to the start of your journey and tell us a bit about that.
32 years ago, on 14th of February 1992, I started, so it's Valentine's Day, which I'll never forget, and I started with National Mutual. You might remember them. They're a company no longer in existence, but they were the second largest insurance and superannuation company in Australia at the time, behind AMP, and I started with them just before superannuation became compulsory, and I joined the corporate superannuation area, and things flew from there. I had a great mentor to start with, worked great divisions, built up a business. And to be honest with you, Chris, I joined the industry because I was a broken down athlete, you could say, with a busted knee and didn't know what to do with myself. And they offered me a job. It was, you're on your own, no salary, and go from there. And I became very lucky very quickly and left there 2 years later, and then to form my own business and sold that in 2006, and then got bored, and in 2012 decided to start again, and just from two of us. So the last business was, we had 55 staff, sold that, 1.6 billion in FUM, 4,500 private clients, and about 50 odd thousand members of corporate super funds as clients, and sold that and retired, you could say, young. Got very bored very easily and came back 12 years later and got permission to build it again, and from those who we must obey, called your spouses.
Yeah.
So it's and Jamie, who has become our CEO as of the 30th of June, was employee 001 into the new business, so it was 9-10 years ago now, and he became a partner 5 years ago, which was very quick, but it was well deserved. And he's
15 years, 14 years.
Yeah, so he's now the group CEO, and he's doing an unbelievable job, taking a lot of pressure off me. So that's the journey in short.
So over you mentioned you were an athlete before. You represented Australia in 3 disciplines.
3 different sports, yeah.
One
of those disciplines actually has 3 sports in it. So I was originally a swimmer. But I was also a state cross-country runner as well. So my family's heritage on my father's side was all athletics, and although I was pretty good at it, I didn't necessarily love it as much. Swimming came more naturally to me, and my parents being 10-pound poms over here, it's a lot like the Greeks and Italian kids as well. None of them could swim, and but I went and swam, and I was just naturally built for it. 6'2" in height and 6'4" wingspan, and so a bit of an orangutan arms, and came natural. And I had a great coach as a young kid, Harold Watson, who everyone was petrified of, including me, but magnificent coach, the old school coach, would yell at you, and it's, and that was my first foray into sport. Swam at a very elite level, didn't get to the Olympics, but, I swam at APAC, and so I was hoping for 88 in the Olympics, but didn't get there. I was a freestyler and butterflyer, which was in Australia is probably 2 of the most competitive disciplines you can do in swimming. And so that was first of all, got to swim for Australia, and then moved into triathlons, which was a natural progression. My Year 12 school teacher at St Bernard, Sherrod Donnelly, he won the 1988 Ironman triathlon championships, Australian championships, and I think he finished top 15 in the Hawaiian Ironman, and he was my PE teacher, and he spoke to the old man and said, it's a natural progression for your son. And so I did. I actually did my first triathlon in 1984 as a 14-year-old. I had to lie about my age because you had to be 18, and came out of the water in first place, didn't know what the hell to do, jumped on a bike, rode 40k, and got passed by everyone, and then ran really well and got myself and won the junior section. But my old man wouldn't let me go and get that $10 prize money, because then I would have been classed as a professional, and I might have missed out on making the Olympics that I never made. So but he bought me a trophy just
There
for
you
fun.
go.
There you go.
So, and you also share a mutual love for martial arts.
Yes. So,
Also a 3rd degree black belt.
yeah. I did boxing as a young kid as well. My father. I have very, very high natural testosterone levels, and my father decided that that had to be tempered, and the best way to temper it was for me to be tired constantly. So I was involved in every sport that you could constantly think of. So discipline is going to bed early, and also when you're doing all of those sports in the world too, as much as I was as much of a rascal as all my teenage friends were. I never smoked, hardly drank, and never did drugs. So from that perspective, it was a bit of a natural life. But so I did boxing for 4 years as a kid. He used to make me run down to Jack Rennie's in Essendon, and I'd go and box with Graham Brooks, who he sponsored, became the Australian flyweight champion. And Porky still sends me a birthday message every year. Good old Porky Brooks. And then I was a natural progression into martial arts. I did that for 14 years as well. Got my 3rd Dan black belt and was over in the UK in 1999 for the world champs and in free fighting, which was not quite at one of your other guest levels, Sam Greco. So yeah, Sam's a lovely guy, nowhere near Sam, just in case you're listening, Sam. I'll tell you a quick story. My young son, I introduced him to Sam when he was 5, when Sam just won the K1 World Championships in Japan, won his $1 million. And I said, Josh, this is Sam, and Sam's the world champion in karate and mixed martial arts. And Josh looked at him and goes, "Could you take him, Dad?" And I said, "Oh, no, son." So the only chance I have against Sam is maybe running away from him. So,
he's a gentleman. He's a 4-time world heavyweight champion.
He's a beautiful man too.
I sat ringside with him side by side when my brother won his first Australian title.
Okay, then, yeah.
And as the fights were progressing, he was cheering, I was cheering, and I was thinking, I wonder if he just my brother for the last fight. And I said, "Oh, who are you going for the last fight?" He goes, "Oh, Pat Christophe." And I go, "Oh, thank God." I go, "That's my older brother." And he was side by side, and he was just a beautiful, humble man.
He is a
animal in the ring,
yeah,
but a humble man. Now, also, you were training to swim as well.
Yeah,
so tell us briefly about that, because I want to ask you how that helped your career and how you mixed them as well.
Yeah, so I went from the 3 sports were triathlons, swimming and martial arts, but in regards to, I was training for, which unfortunately I didn't get to do, but I was training to swim the English Channel in 2020. And it's basically about 4 years of training. The last 18 months in particular were really hard. So I would swim 2 hours every morning, 2 hours every evening, and up to 10 kilometers a day in the pool.
Insane.
Yeah, I did get told I just basically stunk of chlorine for at least 6 days a week, because I only did that 6 days a week. It wasn't 7 days, but Fridays were open water swims down here in the bay for about 4.5 hours, 5 hours just in the bay, swimming from Elwood to Brighton Pier and back a few times, like 4 or 5. And that was... two unfortunate sides of that. The first unfortunate side was I was struggling to put on the weight that you have to put on to swim the English Channel because it's so cold. When you're basically burning 12,000 calories a day and you have to put on 20 plus kilos, it's really difficult. And there's only so much food you can eat, or so many pizzas you can eat.
Before you look at food and it makes you sick.
Listen, if I ever ate a Krispy Kreme donut again, I'd dry reach. Just to look at a Krispy Kreme donut trying to put on the weight. And so I did successfully get up to from 92 kilos to 113 kilos, and around about 8 weeks before I was meant to be over there to do it, it got cancelled because of COVID. Now, I did get a bit grumpy because even though she's the greatest open water swimmer Australia, if not the world, has ever seen, Chloe McArdle, Australian girl, they did let her go over to do it because she was going for her world record triple crossing of, so she was allowed to do it, but Tony, the nobody, wasn't allowed to go over there and do it during COVID. But that aside, it did come with its health concerns besides putting on the weight. I've got back down to 100, so I've still got 8 more kilos to drop, but the shoulder, and I ended up with high blood pressure as well with the weight gain. And so that was a bit sad in respect to not doing it. And then when we got to France, we were driving to Bologna in Italy, and we were going to see Pearl Jam in concert. So we had the tickets to see Pearl Jam as well. So it's
But like on a side note, I know you outside work as well. We're friends through Cub as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, everyone's had challenges growing up, but you've had quite a lot of challenges growing up. You were an elite athlete. You started successful businesses. How do you merge all them together?
It's one of the things I actually look for, interestingly enough, when we're recruiting staff as well. It's two things I look for. What voluntary work have they done besides what was compulsory through school? When you have to spend 2 weeks doing the salvos or something. So first of all, have they done any voluntary work?
Philanthropy work?
Yeah. And that might be donating their time, so we've had somebody whose brother was blind and she donated her time to teaching blind kids how to play soccer. So just little things like that. Another one who volunteered at the Vision Australia down in Toorak. So we people who first of all do that shows something different. You usually have a reason to do it, but it might be a family member who was sick or something like that. So that shows a side of a person which shows
Good.
empathy. Yeah,
Empathy, caring for someone else.
Absolutely, and not doing
Selfless.
it. Yeah, we're not doing it to get thanked either, because I know you do a hell of a lot. You've raised a lot of money for good as well. We both share that passion. I think that's number one. And secondly, sport. You don't have to play sport at an elite level. But one thing I know through going to St Bernard's out in Essendon, which was a real sporting school, sport was compulsory. And through that, you learned teamwork because you had to play a lot of team sport as well there. So for me, it was football predominantly. But you're also part, let's say, for example, of the cross-country team. Now, if I finished 14th in the ACC championships, let's say, or the state championships rather than 16th, those extra couple of points might have got St Bernard's the trophy, the team's event and things like that. So it is actually still a team sport. You still have to do your PB. You might not finish in the medals, but it's still really important.
You're carrying the weight of the team. You're helping it.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I found, Chris, was that my sister was definitely more naturally talented in sport than me. She just didn't like it. She didn't care for it. So so I had to get up early in the morning, which meant my dad had to get up early in the morning to take me to sport. So I think it was that natural discipline. And one of the things I've seen, especially the kids in sort of year 7, 8, and 9, who are those man-childs, they're just men before their time.
They're massive, yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones who had all that natural talent. It's the hard workers who end up with the ones progressing in sport because they had to work harder, they had to have the discipline. The ones who had it naturally talented and were just, mature beyond their years, when everyone else starts to catch up with them, you can start to see them slipping away. They don't have that natural discipline.
So hustle
they don't have that
talent,
discipline.
talent won't hustle. Yeah, it's all the hard work, and you see so
They're
many
there
good
15
athletes.
minutes before the training. They're asking their coach what can they do to improve their left foot kick. The coach is saying, Kofkin, your right arm is too straight, but you seem to be getting the speed, or you're a bit slower off the blocks today. What's going on in your head?
So those kids that do the 10,000 hours, they become an expert in their field. But
they do it out of love too.
I think it's and you see a lot of elite athletes. They're doing it because it's all about getting better. It's about improving. And you hear so many stories. I never won the medal today. I won it in those 4 or 5 years I've trained so hard. But it's not. I think it goes beyond when you're that good. It's beyond love. It's obsession.
Usain Bolt says, I trained for 16 years to win a race that took 9 seconds. Yeah.
Being disciplined in sport, and as you said, when it comes to hiring people that are good in sport, it also shows you can play in a team, that you care about other factors, and being a good, caring person. That really helped you with your recruitment process and scaling good teams?
It did. Well, let me take Jamie as an example. Jamie, who's our CEO now, I met him when I was the fitness coach down at Safia Football Club when I was semi-retired. And Jamie he's very quick mouth, he's very social, and he hated running, despised running, like you can't imagine. I would struggle with him if I had to get him just from a fitness perspective. But I watched him play football, and he was this absolute natural leader on the football field. I don't know if he knew that he had at the time, so an absolute natural leader shone out. But what's important too, he knew he wasn't a fast runner. He knew he didn't like running, but I've never seen somebody with so much football smarts on the field. He knew where that ball was going to go. He
He
just
could
knew where it
study
was
it.
going to go. He was there 10 seconds before anyone else knew where that ball was even going to go
What
off
a
that guy's foot.
remarkable skill. Rodman, they said, who's the best person who he used to study for hours and hours, and it was in The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. When the ball would hit the ring or thereabouts the board, where it would go. And they go, who's always where the ball was? He goes, he had an ability to read. He would study for hours when the ball would hit somewhere where it would go.
Exactly right. And that's where, and if you sort of bring that over into Jamie's leadership skills, we thought he was going to be an advisor when he first joined, and that was where we're moving him down towards. And I sat down with him one day and I said, would you be interested in one day being the CEO and having a leadership role in here rather than going down the advisor role? Now, as you know, advisors, they're income producing for us. Management aren't necessarily. And so even though he would have had a great skill set as an advisor, at the end of the day, I saw his real skill set was in leading people. But like he does in the football field of being able to read play, he does that in business. It just
So
comes
you
naturally.
saw that on the field.
I saw that on the football field to start with because, to be honest with you, he was one of the guys who I would make do extra push-ups just because he annoyed me. He just wouldn't stop talking.
But what was it on the field that you saw?
He would actually rally the team. He was not the captain or even the vice captain. He would rally the team together. If he was playing in the
It was
back line,
the glue that had him?
yeah, if he was playing in the back line, he would be able to tell people where to be, where to go, and people listened to him as well.
Why? Because they respected him.
Well, they knew he knew what he was talking about, and he spoke with authority, but he also knew where they all knew that he knew what he was talking about, and I think that was really something that really shone through in him too. So when you had a look at that and people just that respect they had for him, and then you saw the opposition, the respect they end up having for him as well. Because he played for Myrtleford, which is the Ovens and Murray League as well, which is very high level, one of the highest levels in the state. And when the opposition start paying you respect, but you're not known as the greatest player in the team, but they're paying you respect as well because they can just see that he knows how to rally the troops. And he would get the odd smack in the mouth because he was rallying the troops as well, because he was a bit cheeky with
Comes
his
with the
mouth.
territory, though. Yeah?
Exactly right. But he took it, from that perspective. He's not a big macho guy or anything like that, but he would be out there every day, and his passion was to make sure that team won in the greatest and fairest way possible. And you saw that on the field, and it really shone through. So when Jamie reached out to me and said, Tony, will you mentor me? And this is before I knew what he wanted to do. Didn't really know him except being that annoying young guy down at footy. I absolutely said yes. So we caught up once a month and just had a coffee together. It was just, he wasn't too sure where he wanted to go in his career and things like that. And I said, well, listen, I've been given permission to sort of rebuild again. Would you be interested in coming and working with us?
So as a give back strategy for you, now you're talk about all these points in your life. You've obviously placed a massive importance and emphasis on mentors,
Absolutely.
coaches,
Yeah.
and advisors.
Mm.
So I guess when you get to a certain part of your career or your life, you want to give back some of that knowledge and pay it forward.
Absolutely. And Chris, just like you and your business as well, what we are is we're teachers, we're educators. We're knowledge brokers, you could say. We sell our knowledge.
Knowledge brokers, I like
Yeah,
that.
we actually sell our knowledge. And that's no different than what a teacher does. But the thing is, though, is we're building stuff on behalf of our clients so that their lives are better. And they pay us for that service. They pay you for that service as well. And it is about actually, if you consider we're giving back to our clients, and if you're giving back to your clients, you're giving back to a community. And I gave a talk, was it last week? And it was actually about buy-sell agreements. As we know, insurance is the unsexy part of our industry, but it's the glue that keeps everything together. We've had $58 million worth of lump sum claims, never had a claim knocked back ever. That I can tell you now, that's the type of stuff where you're giving back to the community, because that's a family that no longer have a mortgage. That's a family that don't have to go and worry about getting money off for other family members. They don't have to worry about going on Centrelink. And they're the type of things, when you think about what we do, it is about being able to see a need, being able to show that need, being able to educate people, and being able to actually close it off. And that's the same with your staff and the people that everyone you've got out here and we've got in our team. You mentor them to be the best that they can possibly be. Now, the best they can possibly be is not going to be necessarily, they're not all going to be Michael Jordans, are they? If
Michael Jordan needs a team of people around him too.
Absolutely,
he
he does.
hand-selected when he asked Rodman to come to this team and they go, no, the guy's crazy. He's this. He goes, that's what we need to win.
That's right.
So not everyone's going to be Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen or Michael Jordan, but they will form part of that winning team, that winning six or whatever the case may be.
Well, as you know, we do work with the AFL, and there was 2 years ago they had the best 25 Aboriginal kids under 15 down here in Melbourne, and we also had the best rest of the world, which were predominantly Sudanese kids. 25 predominantly Sudanese kids, a few Vietnamese kids, and they're under the age of 15. All in a training camp together. So basically 50 kids, boys, young boys under the age of 15, did not know each other, all very shy at first, all became best friends by the end of the week. But
good team camaraderie.
Absolutely. But Chris Scott gave a really great speech, to these young kids. And he said, there's 50 of you guys here. You are the best in the country under 15, but you're the best Aboriginal kids and the best rest of the world kids under 15. There are another 700, 800 kids who are just as good as you. And what's going to happen is when it's your turn to get recruited, all of you kids, there's 700 to 800 of you who are very similar, and roughly about 40 of you are going to get recruited. So who in this room, if you look at that means only 4 of you out of this 50 are going to get recruited. What's going to make you stand out? Because you're all naturally talented. But what is it that's going to make you stand out? First of all, do you listen? Are you coachable? Do you want to improve? And if you're that kid that gets to training 10 minutes beforehand, that makes sure your boots are cleaned, if you're that kid who is billeted out, because a lot of these kids, when they go into state, end up being billeted to other families. Like if you take...
What's billeted at me?
Staying with a family. So in other words, they're going into state. So a lot of the Aboriginal kids who get recruited in WA or South Australia, they have other Aboriginal families to live with.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so here in Melbourne, there's not as much. There's not as many. So... but from that perspective, as you said, are you going to be the kid who is going to clear your table and wash the dishes with your billeted host family? Because you're the kid that I want to coach.
The extra mile.
Correct.
The kind, the giving, the thoughtful.
Those 1%ers that we all talk about, that if they become second nature to you, they're not 1%ers anymore. It's just a natural part of life.
It's a ripple effect, isn't it?
Correct. It's a natural part of life, but it's part of every aspect of your life moving forward as well. It doesn't matter whether if you don't get recruited, but you end up finishing school because of that discipline.
It embeds in your subconscious.
Correct.
So the thing is, even when
don't take your talent for granted.
But even when you're talking about and the reason I was alluding to, I guess, all your success in sport, you're able to transfer that skill, that discipline, that ability to work in a team environment to create that. And as you saw in your CEO, the team camaraderie, to see something on the field, hey, this guy's a good leader of people. He can take a whack as well, which you need to as a CEO. You need to in business.
Absolutely.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
Take a whack and listen and come back.
Correct.
But also, I really enjoyed the tip that you shared about how you recruit and why. Lead with good person first and also have some background in sport. Because I reached out to you and asked you a bit about the philanthropy work that you do, how you structure it, how you can get more bang for your buck and how you rally behind. Because as soon as I heard you talking about it, I wanted to know more. So I reached out.
Absolutely.
You were very, very kind enough to meet with me for lunch. We caught up and you just said, I just wanted to pick your brain, understand how you do what you do. What can I be doing different? How can I add more value? How can I serve my community better? Because I know philanthropy is also very, very important to you.
Huge part of what we do, as I know it is for you too, which is why when you say, how can I get more bang for my buck? That's what you're saying to me is, how can I get more money into the hands of the people that need it? Why wouldn't I sit down with you and say, here's what we do, what ideas, what have you done? So why wouldn't we share that with each other that, you've raised over $800,000, for charity, and you've got I think you've got a house up for sale at the moment.
A couple of weeks we're hoping to get $1 million for a house it's a 4-year project, which is something we're very proud of. That was just an idea and concept.
Yeah, but so you should be. But what you're doing there is you're giving back to people who haven't had necessarily the same opportunities that we have had. And I spoke about that on Saturday at a luncheon with 15 really powerful executive women and me. I was in my element. But I spoke about my parents and what they went through. My father was an orphan after World War II, Jewish orphan living in the East End of London after World War II. Had a good experience in the orphanage, thankfully. My mother grew up in horrendous poverty, and her mother died giving birth to her in Ireland. She was born in a barn. They didn't even have a house. She spent the first 3 years of her life in a barn sharing with animals. And then she was raised by nuns, Catholic nuns. And if you know that story in Ireland, that was not nice at all. And if you have a look at them, and they came over here, no different than, say, your families and so many of our generation's parents came over here with nothing and worked their butt off to give us the opportunity to have an education that they haven't had. And as a result of that, it's what we call breaking the cycle.
That's why I think, how dare I ever complain or say anything bad when I've been given these opportunities to take advantage of everything in front of me. So here's your parents are, here you are, created this success that you did. When you talk to me about, and I love homelessness, it's something I'm passionate about, you talk about Aboriginal youth and breaking that cycle. Homelessness is very, very similar.
Absolutely.
It's just that one cycle. So if you're third generation homeless, people don't understand you're not on the grid. You don't get welfare payments. You're in a bad circumstance times 2, times 3. How do you break that? But if you are that one person to break that cycle or to help one family, guess what happens? It's a ripple effect. So when you said to me, it resonated so much with me that one kid can break that cycle, which is generational.
Up
How
to
much
10
harder?
generations
That's insanity.
positively affected by that. So if you think of what my parents went through and generations before that, what their families went through, which weren't nice whatsoever, my parents statistically should not have been good parents. They were really good parents. Statistically, they should have been abusive parents. It should have been a horrible upbringing. And they came here, worked their butts off like a lot of migrants did who came here. And, your typical middle-class Moonee Ponds parents made sure we had an education. My father was, up at 4:30 every morning to take me swimming training, then would sleep in the car for 2 hours whilst I was swimming, then would have breakfast together, then I'd be off to school. He would come home every single night at 5 o'clock so he could have dinner with the family. Then he would go back to work after that. You don't realise that until you become a parent yourself of how lucky,
impressive that is.
Unbelievably impressive,
but
yeah.
you know what? You see, as a parent now of 4, I've got 4 children. What my parents did for me, the value of their hard work.
Yeah.
My dad would work at Collins Booksellers. My mum would work at a plastic packing factory.
Yep.
Omicron, they started a business in Cyprus, a supermarket. Yep. What you subconsciously saw their hard work and their sacrifices, and someone goes, I'm the luckiest human to walk this planet. The opportunities that I've been given, been fed, been looked after. It's up to you now.
That's the key. It's up to you now. And that's what my mum always said to me. You'll be educated. What you do after that is up to you. And she's the boss of our house. Trust me, she's 85. I'm still scared of her. So
my mum's the same.
So it's how you were raised, but it's broken the cycle. And what I mean by breaking the cycle too, my children who are now 28 and 25, my 2 sons and my 2 nieces who are they'll be 23 and 21, live in the US with my sister. They've had every opportunity in the world, and all 4 of them are doing really well for themselves. So that cycle has been broken, and that's what my friend Nova Peris talks to me about. And, you have a look at her 3 children. She was given an opportunity. She broke the cycle. She's the first, Aboriginal gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist. She's represented Australia in 2 different Olympics in 2 completely different sports. She was the first female Aboriginal senator in federal government. She's the first of everything, Nova is, but that was breaking the cycle because somebody saw her, believed in her, gave her the opportunity. And then you have a look at her 3 children, once again, all done so well. So
she broke that mold.
She broke the mold. And this is now going to be generational. All her children have had the education. Young Jack at the moment, he's down at Essendon playing in the VFL. He's one of the nicest, sweetest, most handsome young boys you ever meet.
You love footy, do you?
I love my Bombers.
My brothers are obsessed in footy. I've got Anthony Koutafidis on our podcast next week.
Yeah.
We've had Heath Shaw on our podcast as well. We've had some great footy guests.
You can tell Anthony, well, if he listens to this, I did vote for him. Oh. So even though he played for Carlton, I still did vote for him.
Who do you follow?
Essendon.
Essendon, there
Yeah,
you go.
so there you
You
go.
mentioned Essendon before.
Yeah, so there you go. Even though I did not, and being an Essendon supporter, you don't like Carlton or Collingwood, but I
Look,
still
my
voted for him.
brothers are Collingwood. My whole family's Collingwood. I don't know anything about footy. I don't follow that at all.
What happened?
No, I like very, very different sports. I like cue sports, snooker in particular,
Yes,
and
you
I
do.
love fighting. So
Yeah.
they're two sports that I
Yep.
enjoy, but
Yep,
no other sports I watch, follow, understand, or know,
yep.
which is funny enough.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, so in all of your experiences, because you've had a plethora from personal to business, what are some of the key takeaways for someone listening that you've taken away? What are the key aspects? You'd give them 2-3 points. I'm thinking of starting a business. What would that be?
Very interesting question, Chris. I was asked if I could spend a day at Sydney University. It was the last day of the entrepreneurial and business course, to lecture these students. And the very first thing I said was, hands up those of you in this room that want to start your own business and end up being like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. And virtually all the hands in the room went up. The only ones who didn't were the guys playing on their phones, but everyone else's hands went up. And I said, so for the next 7 years, are you prepared to work 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, and drive a 20-year-old car and earn less money than what you pay half of your staff? Because that's the world of being self-employed. But if you're willing to go through that, what you're doing is you're creating an investment. You're creating an
environment
asset.
where that's possible.
Correct. And you're creating an asset, which is a sellable asset. So even though the first few years you might be earning less than some of your staff, you actually have an asset, which is a sellable asset that can actually be sold, that your staff are still employees of, just employees, unless they, had the opportunity to buy in. So the first thing is understand that not everyone becomes a $1 billion unicorn business overnight. And there is, the old adage of it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. And it is very true.
I say that all the time.
Yeah. And it is so true because, like yourself, Chris, it doesn't matter how successful wherever we are in life, we always are still striving to be better.
People look at that and that it's a great point. They want the success, they want the awards, but they're not willing to do the work. They don't see the 20 years that superseded that. I was saying to someone, it took me 4 or 5 years to start making money in this business, to pay back the debts when I started the business. But it's people only see the now.
That's right.
So basically, willing to put in the hard work.
You have to be willing to put in the hard work. Secondly, you have to have a plan. And what I mean by that is when I was talking to these guys, like what we do at Cub and how we met as an example, you actually you don't have to be an extrovert, but you have to have the ability to be able to go out there and speak to people, because you could build the greatest SaaS platform or the greatest tech thing or widgety thing. You can see how tech driven I am, but you can have the greatest thing in the world, but if people don't know about you, they're not going to come to you. It's not going to be a case like Field of Dreams, build it and they shall come. So people have to know about you.
Be able to sell and market it.
Yeah, and it's being able to, from that perspective, originally it was about me selling my skills and what I can do. Now it's the firm. It's not about me anymore. It's the same with you. You were the one knocking on the doors and doing everything that you had to do to build this firm today. But it's the firm now. It's the firms that might be driven by you or I, but at the same time, it still comes down to the fact that you have to be able to you don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to go out there and, be crazy and do things to get attention and things like that. But you have to be able to let people know your worth and what you do. And even, for example, in the core sessions, which you and I have been part of the same core group together, it's actually getting the people in that group, because not all of them are natural talkers, say like you or I, but it's getting everyone in that group to actually open up and talk about what they've done, because they're business owners. They're successful in some way, but what is it that they have that when we're talking to a client, you can say, hold on a second, Ben Shapiro does that. I reckon
beneficial.
I reckon Ben, I should introduce you to Ben.
I have to comment because shout out to Cub. It's a club of United Business we're both members of. I highly recommend any entrepreneur to sign up. You do core, which is knowledge, opportunities, and relationships, are 3 sessions. And you chaired one, which you were the spokesman of it. And you did the research before everyone walked in. And for me, as you mentioned, I don't need people I can talk. But you made everyone feel comfortable to be able to share, and you did a very good job sharing their knowledge, because you got them to open up, and it made that experience so much nicer for all of us involved. And it also got those extroverts to talk a bit. There's introverts, sorry.
That's right. Yeah,
now,
thank you.
As has become a custom on our podcast, are you ready for your quick fire questions?
Go for it.
What's the most inspiring story you've heard recently?
Most inspiring story I've heard recently is a person who's become a friend of mine in more recent times. We met through both being directors of a charity, and she wasn't meant to live past her 16th birthday. She is 43, great entrepreneur, really great at what she does, raising 2 children. And I think that is one of the most inspirational stories I've seen, her journey of somebody who is not meant to be alive today and didn't go through primary school. She's worked in one of the big four. She's director of companies. She's had her own business employing over 130 people.
You've mentioned this to me before.
Yeah, that's the type of thing. That's a real life person that inspires me. Somebody I know who I just think, wow.
What's one thing you'll tell an 18-year-old self?
To 18-year-old me.
Your 18-year-old you.
Don't be so reactive.
Who would play you in a movie based on your life? Which actor?
Who I want or who would?
You could tick
of
both
course,
of-
I'd want Brad Pitt, you know.
Yes,
That's not going to happen. I have been told that there is, if you've watched Ray Donovan, I have been told I look like Liev Schreiber,
There you go.
especially when my hair's a bit shorter. So maybe 6'2" Liev.
What's your proudest moment so far?
My children.
If you could learn one skill instantly, what would it be?
The ability to be able to always constantly listen deeply rather than just sometimes hearing words.
What's the best way you manage stress in your life? What's your
Meditation. 3,868 days in a row as of this morning.
That's the spirit. That's fantastic. How do you find balance in your personal life, professional life?
Time management. I go to bed early. I'm up at 5 every morning. I have 3 hours to myself virtually every morning when no one speaks to me because no one's really up at that time. So time management is really vitally important. When I'm work, I only have 3 roles in my job now, and that is I see my clients, my existing clients, I see people who give me clients, and I go out there and find clients. That's
all client facing.
Yeah.
What's the one non-negotiable in your life?
There's probably a few. My one non-negotiable, which I'm learning to be far better at, Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now says it the most, and that is to live in the present and not live in the past.
Very hard. I'm the same.
Unbelievably hard to do, and it's basically try not to rehash the past. Try not to live in glory days as well. Try not to rehash the bad things that have happened in your life. You and I are talking now. One thing I've always loved about chatting to you, we're always present when we chat with each other. And so right now my focus is this with you, and that's something that I would love to be able to master. Getting there.
You're always a very calm, chilled. When you say you get up at 5, spend 3 hours to yourself, you meditate every day.
It's only 20 minutes. I don't do 3 hours of meditation.
But 3 hours to yourself, yes, you said.
Correct.
I can see how, knowing you and speaking to you many times, I can see that actually in your persona, in your personality.
Thank you.
What's the most underrated quality in a successful person, in your opinion?
Humbleness.
If you could undo one mistake in your past, what would it be?
Just one?
Just one.
This is quick fire questions, aren't they? If I could undo one mistake in my life, what would it be? When my youngest son wanted me to listen, I should have shut up and stopped talking.
Listening is always hard. They give you one mouth, 2 ears. We should use them accordingly.
Absolutely.
Now, what's one book or podcast or thing that you've read that's really impacted you? You recommend?
The Power of Now is a great book.
By Eckhart Tolle that you mentioned. And he's got quite a few. He's amazing.
He is absolutely amazing. A book I read recently, when I say recently, probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, when I was giving that talk at Sydney University, it was by Phil Knight, Shoe Dog. Great book, because what it showed is, you think of Nike as one of the greatest companies in the world. For 20 years, they were on the verge of bankruptcy every single day. Yeah. And the hustle that he had to do to be able to get those shoes, sell those shoes, not get ripped off by shoe manufacturers, that hustle for basically the first 20, you see Phil Knight with his $44 billion in Nike today and things like that. But that hustle for as long as he did to get through that, that is one book for anyone who is contemplating becoming self-employed that they should read.
They made a movie as well. I think it's called Air. I watched
it's
it.
a great movie. Yeah.
Amazing, very funny.
Yeah, it is.
Last
actually.
question. Scale of 1 to 10, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast?
11.
There you go. Tony, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you around Cub, and thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as me.
Thank you, Chris. I've loved it, and I love always chatting to you.